Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest in the award-winning OnBase podcast series. I was just saying, I can't believe we're closing in on 600 episodes already in the can. So very exciting. I'm your host, Paul Gibson, and with AI on everyone's lips right now, I'm excited that today I'm talking with Rob Gold. He's Global President at Dentsu B2B. And today we're discussing a great topic, which we've named AI, strategy, and the new blueprint for B2B success. It sounds an exciting one, Rob. I'm excited to get you on the show, and thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on, Paul. It's great to be here.
Brilliant. So this is, of course, is going to be a really interesting and relevant topic for everyone. But before we get into it, let's start with a simple question, Rob. Can you walk us through your journey, where you are today, and what inspired you to focus on this particular topic?
Well, again, thanks, Paul, for having me here. I'm a massive podcast fan. I love your content. Congratulations on getting near to 600. Long may that continue. And Demandbase, I believe, is a fantastic platform for driving innovation in the B2B sector. So that's a great topic to get into. As for me, I live in North London in the UK. I'm married to a graphic designer called Joe, and I have two kids called Charlie and Poppy. From a career perspective, I started my journey 22 years ago now, and I worked for BMW in the marketing team. I then moved over to the publicist agency Zenith, where I grew my chops as a media planner. And then in 2018, I went to run a technology business called DWA, where we specialized in driving outcomes for lots of different technology clients in the B2B space. In 2019, DWA were acquired by Merkle, and then we looked to combine three businesses together. DWA was the media agency, creative agency was called Gyro, and we acquired a business called B2B International, who are a research company, and we formed Merkle B2B. Merkle B2B were an integrated B2B business servicing global clients, and I ran the European region. And then over the past couple of years, we saw the B2B category explode. Lots of customer demand, changing ecosystem, more opportunities to help our customers grow. And we evolved our proposition to what it is today, which is Dentsu B2B. And my responsibility, as you said, is to lead this globally. We exist to connect modern business and to drive outcomes for our customers. We're a network of about 1,000 B2B specialists, globally connected, and we are very proud to work alongside some of the world's most ambitious and innovative companies. So that's a little bit around how we got to where we got to.
Awesome. Great. What a story. And some great names in there. So lots of experience and knowledge to pick your brain on today. So as we look back, was there anything particularly that inspired your focus on what we're talking about now, solving business challenges and transforming marketing strategies and things like that?
Well, a good question. I think if you look back, I've never been someone who really sits still very often. I like trying new things. I'm always trying to move forward, and I really like achieving goals and outcomes. And if you spoke to my mum and dad, they'll tell you about when I learned to ride a bike, which was I took the stabilizers off, I kept riding, I kept falling over, and then eventually I started to ride the thing. And that sort of definitely carried me through, I think, in the way that I am today. I've got a natural curiosity, and when you combine that with a short attention span, it means there's always new things on the horizon. And the B2B category is a tremendous enabler, I think, of curiosity. There is so much change, so much disruption, so much innovation. Obviously, we'll talk about that today. It has not been hard to stay interested. And I think it's a big intellectual challenge too. You know, being able to cut through all of that complexity to drive an outcome is really satisfying. And that's why our organization exists today. And I think that's why our industry is incredibly motivating, because it's always in self-reinvention.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, as you know, we work with you, partnering with yourselves, and there's so much knowledge and experience you've got in your business and in your teams that it can only be beneficial for the people you work with. So you've as you described in your opening, you've got a pretty varied background. How do you think this has shaped your leadership approach and your vision for Dentsu B2B?
At my heart, I'm a comms planner. And I think at the heart of comms planning is understanding people and what they do, why they do it, how the world around them impacts their decisions, the role the cultural landscape plays. On reflection, that transcends to my approach to leadership and how our business operates. I place a huge emphasis on personal connections and integrity. I'm sure if you spoke to my colleagues, there are many things they'd give you constructive criticism about me, but I'd hope that they would reflect back my focus on them, their motivations, our commitment to our clients, our business, and importantly, our industry. And these are values that I hold very tight, actually. I say the other thing that I've always held very close is the ability to look up and out a lot. And that's certainly been a core part of what makes Dentsu be what we are today. We're always evolving our offerings to reflect what our customers need now and what we think they're going to need tomorrow. You'll see that in our solution sets, Paul, whether it's our ABX 360 proposition, which is all about using data, technology, and AI to surround customers, whether it's our new B2B influence capability, which we're launching soon, which we think is the first end-to-end pure play B2B influencer proposition that exists, or our relentless focus on buyers. We did this thing called the Superpowers Index, the world's largest understanding of why buyers buy. So I think people, innovation, always moving forward are things that hopefully capture me pretty well, and I hope are reflected in the business that we are today.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think putting the buyer first is such a simple thing to say, but it's so important. And I run a pretty large sales team, and my question to them is always, have we identified the why? Have we turned this from a nice to have to a need? And that's understanding the business, the buyers, and what they're really trying to accomplish and solve. So I think, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. So as we dig a little bit deeper into the main topic, what would you say are the essential behaviors and modern B2B marketers that might be listening today need to adopt if they're going to stay competitive in today's evolving landscape? That's a big question.
It's a big question. And, it's one I do feel fairly well qualified to answer. I mentioned our Superpowers Index a second ago. So if I take a step back, we passionately believe that you have to have a strong position on buyer behavior in order to provide an opinion to you or services in today's ecosystem. And for the past 4 years, it's safe to say that we have become a little bit obsessed with understanding buyer behavior. So we created something called the Superpowers Index. So for the past 4 years, we have spoken to 14,000 B2B buyers. We've deconstructed 25,000 B2B buying experiences across 4 categories and all regions around the world. Now, what that means is we understand buyers, we believe, better than anybody else. So the essential behaviors, Paul, come out of what buyers are saying influences their buying situations, not just my opinions. If I was to distill it down, the first one is around brand and trust. People buy brands because they trust them. And the importance of a strong brand is that they are aware of a brand, they can differentiate a brand, they know why that brand exists. And actually, decision drivers are more important now when buyers are buying products and services than product drivers. So if you don't have a strong brand that's inherently built on trust, you're not even at the races to start with. The second essential behavior is about focusing on your buying experience. Again, you look at the market, the longer decision-making, bigger decision-making unit, and just generally more complexity and competition in the market means that sales cycles are getting even longer. But we know through our Superpowers Index exactly where customers should focus to bring their sales cycle down. So in fact, we can tell you, if you focus on specific parts of your buying experience, you can reduce that sales cycle by up to 16 weeks. 16 weeks times by the economic impact of a delayed sale could be massive in terms of economic value to that business. And the third essential behavior, we believe, is all about having the ability and the agility to be data-driven. So better personalization, better decision-making, better predictive modeling. We talk a lot about the importance of connecting these 3 areas together because it's a complicated ecosystem with lots of different stakeholders. But fundamentally, Paul, brand and trust, experience, and data-driven agility are definitely 3 behaviors that are essential to today's modern B2B buyer.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're preaching to the converted here. I think I'm aligned with you in all of that. And that brand one is, and the trust is such an important one because probably it started with COVID, right? When all the face-to-face meetings and trade shows and all that sort of stuff stopped. The only way you could actually engage with someone was digitally. And a lot of people just sat there, crossed their fingers and hoped that people came to their website. Well, if they've never heard of your brand, they're not going to have the trust to come and visit your website. You're missing the trick. So it's so
important. Trust is an outcome, isn't it? It's an outcome of all those things. You can't create trust through anything other than the way that you communicate, people being aware, the values that you represent. So I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And equally, if you're a salesperson and you're reaching out because you saw some magic buying signal, but they've never heard of you, don't know your brand well enough to trust you, they're not going to take your call, let alone engage with you. So yeah, really important subject there. So if we think about go-to-market strategies, again, these GTM and all these different analogies are out there, but how would you define a successful strategy? And are there any key aspects that you think can make or break it?
Well, I'm a pretty simple person. So my simple articulation of a successful go-to-market strategy, simply put, is one that's customer-centric. You need to have a deep understanding of your buyer dynamics, clear articulation of the category opportunity, and you need to be able to say why your brand has the right to win versus another one because it serves your customer more brilliantly than somebody else. And you need to have a clear understanding of what success of that strategy looks like. And then you need to align that across the business, because without alignment, then you're all pointing in different directions. Customer centricity is really important with your go-to-market strategy. You asked about things that would break it. Well, I see in this world quite a lot of thrash. You can be too tactical too quickly. If you've got no methodology for decision making, and if you can't answer the why, then I think you're going to fail. The other thing on reflection, I just mentioned about a lack of focus on brand. People will not buy for you. We just talked about this, Paul. People will not buy for you unless they know you, unless they trust you. And as I just said, trust is driven through the alignment of values, and values are driven by people being aware of your brand. And I think that melting pot is critical, that you can't forget it. But optimistically, I do believe that we have all the sweets in the shop right now. If you think about, we have the backbone of data and technology, which enables innovation and much more targeted communications. But we also deal in facts and evidence much more. We shouldn't have to be debating what's right or wrong in our industry anymore. The data is there in all of its glory. So we should really be innovating in new ways with new technology and new strategies, because we can monitor everything and compare it versus previous tactics. So for me, this makes the new sort of go-to-market thinking incredibly exciting for anybody that's involved to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it amazes me, and you probably see this as well, how many B2B companies have a almost B2C approach to their awareness and marketing. I mean, if you sell to banks and financial institutions, there's absolutely no benefit in marketing to, say, French Connection, a big retailer. But companies do that, right? So their brand awareness is here, there, and everywhere, which on the surface probably sounds, okay, we want to get our name out there. But you're creating false positives then, because you might get French Connection to click on your ad. You might get them come to your website, and they all look like great metrics. But really, they're companies you can't sell to, and they end up in pipeline, and sales chase them, but they can't close them. And worst case scenario, if they do close one, it's a really poor fit, and therefore it's impossible to get to value, and they churn. So I think go-to-market strategies, if you're a B2B, you've got to think B2B, right? Not the old B2C approach, spray and pray and hope some of it sticks. Do you see that much going on?
It's a very topical discussion, and we do see it, actually. It's very easy to get someone to buy a toothbrush, buy something from French Connection, or even buy a car. It's not a long decision-making process. You haven't got many people involved. Do some advertising, do some search marketing. Someone's going to buy that product. And there's elements of that I do think can be applied to B2B, particularly when it's around driving brand and trust. But the massive difference in the B2B ecosystem is the number of people involved in a decision, the long duration of a sales cycle, and the nuances of categories and verticals. And I think people get tripped up a lot when they don't understand that. I mentioned, our purpose is around connecting modern business. And that word connecting is critical, because unless you can connect initial exposure through to a nurture stream and then get somebody to actually come into your buying world, you're never going to get there. So we do see it. And interestingly, we've seen in our organization, we're able to help lots of businesses that you wouldn't necessarily have thought to be B2B companies. They're retail businesses, telecommunication businesses, companies where they're trying to drive huge growth to key customers, where massive amounts of their revenues are based on wholesale and arguably what you might call B2B, but they've never really acted in that way. And as soon as you demonstrate how you can connect a brand journey through to a sales nurture around key accounts and then follow that all the way through, light bulbs go off from people's minds. So we do see it, but again, that's where I'm so passionate about our industry, that you have to understand it to be able to do it. And if you don't understand it, you simply can't do it.
Yeah, great point. So let's think about that. Artificial intelligence, right? It's the word on everyone's lips. So how in your viewpoint is Gen AI and AI being used to revolutionize GTM strategies today and brand strategies, particularly in the B2B space?
Wow, it's a pretty awesome topic, I think. Something I get quite excited about. I was out for dinner with a very good friend of mine a couple of weeks ago. Known this guy for, 25 years. And all we talked about was AI over dinner. It was just a bizarre change of dialogue. But I think the topic is so important to talk about. for obvious reasons, but also because it's energizing, I think. And when you think about the opportunity that we all have, I don't believe that we need to change the fundamental rules of marketing. What we do need to do is ensure that our go-to-market strategies are built to lead in this AI-first world. So it all starts, I think, with rethinking the role that AI can play. To my point, I don't think the rule book needs to be rewritten. So I'll again put it simply, AI is everything and everywhere. But you've got to be part of the playground gang here. Now, there's a quote that we've all heard which says, AI won't take your job, but someone using it will. But more importantly, I think we should all be healthily paranoid that other businesses that leverage AI will take your customer. They will capture market share. They will drive customer loyalty faster. So it all goes back to the go-to-market strategy. AI is not the strategy. It is the accelerator of your strategy. And in B2B, it has massive potential because we can move, think about decision-making being much more proactive and being much more real-time. The ability to affect that long purchase cycle I talked about earlier on is quite marked. And we work with, it's important to know, we work with many companies that are already leveraging this technology. I can think of one in particular. They leverage predictive AI across their platforms that surface intent, competitive signals, opportunity scoring, all in real time. The impact that really has is that teams move faster and decisions can pivot much more dynamically. They've told us that as a direct result, their cycles have reduced by up to 30%, which is seismic when you think about the kind of enterprise technology sales that happen. But it does require a totally different change in mindset, I think. Pretty much every single part of the B2B buyer journey is being accelerated by AI technology. And of course, you can look at this in one of two ways. But as an optimist, I think it is tremendously exciting to be part of this revolution right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've opened a can of worms that we're not going to cover off in detail in this time today, but maybe in a future one. But I term it AI without the why, because we're hearing a lot of sales leaders saying they use predictive AI and it's like a black box environment. And it says, go after that account because we say so. And there's no insight as to why or not. And at least 50% of the time they're being sent off on wild goose chases. And so what happens is the sales leaders and the sales team start losing trust and has a real detrimental effect on sales and marketing alignment. But if you're being told, go after that account because they're in market, because they're showing these buying signals, they came to your website and they saw this, they're at this stage in your buyer journey, fantastically useful. If it's just saying, go after that because we told you so, it's starting to affect the confidence. So a little plug for demand-based, we call our product AI with the why, because that gives you all the insight on it. But I think AI, no doubt, is the future. We just have to make sure that it's AI that's driving the right decisions, not 50% of the time the wrong decisions.
Without the why, I like that.
Yeah. So if you think about your day to day and how you're working at the moment, can you share an experience with or an example with the team where Dentsu B2B has helped a client achieve maybe we call it transformational change through integrating AI technology?
Okay, let me have a think. So I guess I'd start by saying, clearly, we're proud to partner with many of the world's most prestigious, innovative and leading companies. And it's important to note that we've been using AI for a long time already. So in a lot of our media engagements, for example, at Dentsu, we are the largest leveragers of embedded AI via the digital platforms like Google, Meta, LinkedIn already. So that means our teams have already been applying audience insight, content optimization, investment allocations via AI for a long time. And that's across our customer base. But a flagship program that I can talk about that we love telling people is from our teams in Northern Europe. For a brand and a business called Satair. So Satair are a leading supplier of parts to the aviation industry. They put planes in the sky. But every year, Satair get over 6 million customer support emails. And a large volume of those are people looking for quotes. So you can imagine the challenge to deal with this volume in order to make sure you protect revenue and protect customer satisfaction. So our teams created an amazing AI powered transformation alongside the teams at Satair. Now, there's lots of things that happen, but at the heart of this, we built an AI quote engine, and it was affectionately called Lily. Now, Lily is currently generating over 450,000 AI-based quotes every single year. It's quite magnificent. The results are unbelievable. Firstly, customer satisfaction is through the roof, but commercially, the results are outstanding. So Satair are publicly reported over 80% increase in conversion rates, over 150% increases in order value, and over 60% increases in revenue. And then if you think about Lily is also doing the work of over 50 people. which allows those organizations to be much more effective and put people in places to drive more customer value. So I think that's a brilliant story of AI-powered B2B transformation, and it's one that we are very proud of here at Dentsu.
Yeah, it's a superb example. And I think we have an agent base which it's all about automating those manual processes that take forever and stop marketing doing what they really want to do, which is marketing, right? So I think that's a great example of where it's the time it saves, it's the resources it saves, and therefore the ability to do what you really should be doing in a business, I think is an excellent one. So that's a great example. If you think about technology and how it's used, how do you balance technologies like an AI while retaining that human creativity or authenticity, which really makes marketing successful?
Well, that's a great question, and it's a very topical question. Lay my stake out by saying we firmly believe in the power of human beings and the role of creativity in impactful marketing. Point number one. My colleague, a guy called Alex Hamilton, who runs our innovation center here at Dentsu, our Dentsu Labs proposition, said a phrase recently I loved. He said that our roles as marketers ultimately to take a customer from being inspired to transacting. That's kind of like, simply put, that's what you have to do. I'm sorry to tell you though, that very few of our customers are coming to our websites for inspiration, more likely functional and to dive into a transaction. And we believe that is a massive miss. And the role of creativity and experience, I mentioned before about the importance of experience, is so much more critical in an AI-driven world. And like your point around Sater then, it's a truism to say that all of our jobs have become more complicated. And the to-do list is certainly not getting any shorter. And I believe that's impacted our ability to focus on things that matter the most. And the beauty of the AI technology is it's freeing up time from the mundane to be redirected to the impactful and the beautiful. And that's where creativity is so important. So we're doing a few things here to sort of balance AI with human creativity. First of all, we're innovating our product set. Again, I mentioned that earlier on. Take B2B influence. It's a great example as trust and validation from peers becomes ever more important and technology allows you to aggregate that kind of tactic. The role of influencers on purchase decision is getting ever more important. And that is creativity at its core. But underneath that, we're rolling out AI tools to allow utilization of those kind of platforms and to democratize how people work. We're giving them the tools and the training to empower them, I guess, to reap the benefit. And then very tactically, we're doing lots of stuff to encourage sharing. So our teams run daily drop-ins at the moment for prompting, sharing of different use cases and making sure that this is much more distributed as a data set across our organization. And then if you think about all of that, you've got creativity, you've got technology, and then I have a big thing about human beings here, that we have to empower people to be more creative thinkers, to be more critical thinkers, to be more empathetic leaders, to make more decisions under pressure. All of these things get more heightened in an AI-driven landscape. So it's all about, I think, coming back to customer-centricity. We've talked about that before. And as long as you are customer-centric and you know how to use the technology in service of your vision, and then importantly, you put the infrastructure in place to allow your people to do that, I think you're onto a winning formula.
Yeah, absolutely. I think same with marketing. In sales, I saw a really interesting post, I think yesterday, someone talking around when AI really gets going, there'll be no need for salespeople other than to build relationships. And I was brought up on things like Challenger Sale, where the relationship builders were the ones that are least likely to be successful in sales. So it's interesting that you hear AI and the way things are transforming. Maybe that's all we'll do. Or maybe salespeople will have to learn another trade. Like, you're never going to get AI doing plumbing or gardening.
You never. Robots.
So if we think about businesses that people may be listening today and they want to revisit their go-to-market strategies, can you give some examples of those very first concrete steps they should take to make sure that they're initiating meaningful improvements?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that we bring all of this down to ultimately for our customers, because there's a lot of swirl going on. So I've got some very specific actions for you, and I can tell you this because it's what we talk to our clients about. I think you've got to start with your baseline. Know your baseline. So map your current performance so you know where you're at and where you need to focus. So as an example, this is where our Superpowers Index comes in. We work with our customers to identify those key decision drivers in the buyer journey, where you're performing well, where you're not performing well, and baselining your performance against those. So knowing your start point. The second then clearly is identifying the gaps and focus on those areas where you can make the biggest wins. It's not necessarily about doing everything. Again, I talked about the most important things earlier on are in driving your brand and your brand trust, focusing on the experience that your buyers are having, and then personalization and agility. These are all critical drivers of why buyers are buying. So I'd recommend starting there in terms of identifying the gaps. I'd then work on alignment, would be my next point. If your key stakeholders aren't aligned around shared outcomes, like I said before, you're just not going to be at the races. You won't gain credibility. You won't prove consensus. So alignment is critical. And then clearly, I think you're missing a trick if you don't look to embed AI in as many parts of your go-to-market strategy as is feasible for you. So we know the impact this technology brings to your business. We know the benefit that it can have on our people. And ultimately, if you're not benefiting, then someone else will. So don't let them take your customer because they're using this technology more than you are.
Yeah, all great points, and I'm sure the people listening will appreciate the insight on that. And I think that that is a really good summary of where you should potentially start. And I think that alignment piece comes up time and time again. It's as old as me, but it's something that's constantly discussed. And we have lots of conversations about people. If you're, as a sales team, you spend all your time and effort on companies you can sell to. The alignment means that marketing should be focusing only on those as well. And I think, so alignment is one that comes up. Maybe we'll do one on alignment as a separate topic one day. So you and I both, I think, are pretty enthused about AI and what it can do. But what advice would you give to anyone listening whose companies may be a little bit hesitant about integrating AI into their own marketing strategies?
But firstly, remember, you're not the only ones. Today, it feels that everyone is investing in some way, shape or form in the technology, but the facts and evidence suggest there's quite a disparate picture. 90% of businesses say that they're going to be increasing investment in AI technology over the next 3 years, but today only 1% are at AI maturity. So I think the real opportunity, as I mentioned before, is to ensure our go-to-market strategies are built to lead in an AI-first world. Don't see it as something separate. See it as an enabler of your existing strategy. I'd start small, pilot in one particular part of your go-to-market area, whether it's researching your audiences and key accounts, whether it's the way your leads are scored, whether it's the way that you personalize content. I focus on the outcomes and not the hype. We just talked about the swirl and all the things that you can do, but what are you trying to achieve? How can the technology help you achieve that better? And be single-minded about that being your rationalization point. But critically, and most importantly, you have to invest in enablement and reducing the friction for our people. They're always going to be the differentiator in your organization, and just don't miss the opportunity to help upskill teams and foster a culture of experimentation. And speaking from our example here, it makes a huge difference. So that would be a place that you really can't skimp.
Yeah, absolutely. That enablement piece is often overlooked, and people try and, even if they're buying a technology, they try and do it without having to spend the time on implementation costs and all that. But you wouldn't buy the best, buy yourself a Porsche but never learn how to drive it. It just doesn't make sense. So I think that's a great point. So thinking further on that, then, if you're listening in today and you love the idea of doing this stuff with AI, but you've got limited resources, how can you leverage AI effectively but stay agile and competitive?
Well, remember my point about embedded AI. There is so much out there already in existing platforms. So ask your partners. Take DemandBase, for example. I know you guys are heavily invested with agents. So anybody who's lucky enough to be a partner of DemandBase can already be leveraging AI in their organization. You don't have to own it and build it yourself. So definitely use your partner ecosystem. I'd also not boil the ocean. So take a look at your end-to-end journey and all the things that your capability set in your organization, and just say, where's the slowest or the most inefficient components? And to start, just target on that, because I bet you that would make more transformative difference again across a broader church of people than trying to be too upstream with it. And I just think we shouldn't be here to chase trends. Broken record time, Paul. We've got to create go-to-market strategies that are built on customer centricity, be clear on the vision and the strategy, and then make decisions about which AI to use and how we use it. And if we do all of that right, companies can be really agile, really competitive, because they're choosing to focus this technology in places that's going to make the most meaningful difference to them in the most impactful and quick way.
Yeah, all great points again. So are there any common challenges you see businesses facing when they try and adopt AI, and any ideas around overcoming those barriers?
I feel like we've sort of covered a few key areas. So to bang the drum, I think it's about enablement and about people. It's very easy to get snowblinded by this situation. So again, speaking from our experience, look at the enablement technologies and trainings that we can give to people, create use cases which are universally applicable and beneficial to lots of people, and advertise your advertising. Just keep talking about it, sharing, demonstrate what's going on. So I think that is definitely a common challenge. People enablement is a big barrier to adoption, and anything you read will say the same thing. So I think that there's probably many, but to focus in on one, I'd say people enablement and reducing friction of use.
Right. As we look to the future, I know AI is a big topic, but any other trends or innovations you're excited about in the evolving world that is B2B?
How long you got? I love our industry, and I mentioned at the start the innovation and the trends that are coming down the line. So, in fact, last year we took a look to the future of B2B, and we published a report called the B2B Futures Report 2030, and we made a load of predictions about what's coming. That report, which we can share, has got 4 key trends, which I believe will totally transform the way we think about B2B marketing and the industry itself. So I can tell you about those 4 if you like. The first one, it was around machine-to-machine commerce. We think this is going to be massive. So by 2030, we believe that 1/3 of all B2B commerce will be autonomous, because the Internet of Things will grow and the ability for actual commerce to become automatic will just be ubiquitous. So that means that you're not only going to have the technology ready, but you're going to have the supply chain ready to deal with autonomous machine-to-machine commerce. Point number 1 in B2B, that's massive. The second trend we came to was what we called marketplace dominance. So today, places are responsible for 15% of digital transactions in the B2B space. By 2030, we believe it will be over 50%. Now, that's already happening with the booms of platforms like Amazon Business, but increasingly the retail media bullet train is going to bleed into the B2B space, and we predict a massive rise in the ecosystem here. We think it's going to democratize commerce for the long tail of companies and give everybody a seat at the table. So marketplace dominance is going to be huge. The third trend we looked at was traceability and ethics. Quite rightly, organizations have never been more under the spotlight, given the impact that businesses have on the world, the economic impact, the supply chains we own, D&I policies, how we invest our profits. And we know that buyers are going to demand transparency across their supply chains, as alignment with personal values and trusting a brand only increases. And also, we wouldn't be surprised if governments start to regulate it. So traceability and ethics is 3. And the last one, if those 3 weren't big enough, is all about speed. Everything is going to be faster, dramatically faster. In fact, if you think about AI, new manufacturing methods, synthetic engineering, predictive production, we believe that go-to-markets will be sped up by 300%. So if you think about 3D printing, for example, as one small part of that component. So we've got lots of things moving, things are going to move quicker. So try chasing that if you're not ready for it. This is what I mean. Our industry is at the bleeding edge of innovation, and I think we should all be very proud and privileged to be part of it. But we've also got a responsibility and an opportunity to be in front of this like we never have been before. So it's a pretty exciting world, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for whatever reason, B2C was always seen as the cool one and B2B the more boring one. I think that's flipping now. I think anyone can do B2C, right? B2B, you've got to be a little bit smarter. So that's not to diss anyone in the B2C space, but yeah, I think the future is very exciting. So just changing tack slightly, you sound like someone who would get into lots of content, consuming books and podcasts, blogs, etc. Are there any particular ones that you recommend to any listeners on the call today?
So I do. I listen to far too many podcasts, I'd say. I tell you what, rather than a specific one, I'll tell you how I use podcasts. So there is so much great content, so many interesting people. And take this last half an hour or so, there's so much going on in the world that it's difficult to stay on top of things, I find. So I use podcasts effectively as a search engine. So I'll go onto my podcast app, I'll type in a topic, And then you get this massive range of content that's more often than not nowadays beautifully curated, has really interesting subject matter experts, isn't too long. That's my point about my attention span. So I find that I can instantly have a formed perspective on a topic that I need to get ahead of really, really quickly. So my podcast recommendations would be massive because I'm fairly promiscuous with my choices, because I almost use it as a generic search term and then find something that I'm interested in. So that's a way that I use the podcast sort of connections that we have nowadays, and I'd recommend that to anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much content out there. I think it's really important. I spoke to a guy last week who said he reads 3 books a day, and I said, no, you don't. He said, well, I don't really. So I use like AI, GPT, whatever it is, to summarize 3 books a day. And you're not really reading the books then. But there's you're not seeing there that are the fun bits in a book. So yeah, interesting stuff. But yeah, you're right. There's so much out there. So here's a cheeky ask. You've been a great guest, Rob, and I think everyone would have enjoyed that. So I'm going to ask you now, can you share the names of anyone that you think are inspirational in the B2B space that you recommend we should also bring on the show?
Oh, could offend a few people here if I'm not careful. Who would I instantly go to? Okay, person number 1, Bob Ray. Bob Ray is a global B2B marketing leader. He's a good friend and a former boss. Based on the West Coast, he's my all-American hero. If you want to get into deep subject matter experts and a really interesting perspective, I'd chat to Bob. Who else would I recommend? I would recommend Tejal Patel. Tejal Patel is a former client of mine, good friend now. Tejal has a very, very broad perspective and a lot of experience in different sectors. What I love when I meet with Tejal is she has a fantastic perspective. She's always got a point of view, and she's always a bit provocative, always pushes my buttons a bit. So Tejal would be good. Who else? I'll tell you what the other person I'd recommend, a guy called Richard Shotton. Richard Shotton was one of my first bosses, great friend of mine now. He's a behavioural economist, one of the cleverest people that I know. He's written a few books and has an amazing way of making a complicated topic very applicable to pretty much anything you're doing. Bob, Tejal, and Richard, if you get those 3 on, I think you'll easily get to 1,000 episodes, Paul. No problem.
Awesome. Well, they're great recommendations, and I know we'll be following up and trying to get them on the show. So appreciate that. Listen, you've been a really informative person to have on, and it's been a great chat. And I'm sure our listeners will have plenty of follow-up questions. So if so, is there a best way for them to get in touch with you?
Find me on Strava. I think LinkedIn. Come to me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to get in touch.
What do you do on Strava? Is that cycling, running, bit of everything?
A bit of everything. It's my motivation tool, I'd say. It's exercise when you're in a busy world with a busy family is very important, I think. And motivation sometimes is tricky. All it takes is flicking it open and seeing who's doing what, and then it gets me out the door. So that's a secret in my life too.
I've started competing with my daughter now. She's at university in Newcastle, and she keeps giving me a time for 5K, and I'm right. Challenge set. So yeah, great thing to do. Listen, Rob, this has been a really great session. I think, if I'm honest, we're only scratching the surface and could definitely arrange a follow-up podcast, dig a bit deeper into some of those topics we just opened. So maybe we'll do that. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your time, and thanks everyone who's listened to this podcast. I hope you've enjoyed the episode, and don't forget, as I said at the beginning, we're approaching 600 other episodes, so feel free to check them out. And in the meantime, thanks for listening, and until the next time, cheerio.
Cheers, Paul. Thank you.